My name is Eric Wilfred Watson. I am the author of Judas Kissed and Becoming Quincy. Both of these thriller novels are available on Amazon.com right now. I just finished reading The Never Game by Jeffery Deaver. While the book is fresh in my mind, I wanted to give a quick, unscripted review and give you a few thoughts and first impressions of the book. The reason I read the book is because I've been watching the television show Tracker. Tracker is, of course, based on the book The Never Game. It stars Justin Hartley, who I'm familiar with from the TV show Smallville. Justin Hartley is perfectly cast as Coulter Shaw, who is a gentleman who makes his living in a rather unique way. He finds missing people for money, rewards. He's not a private investigator, he's not a cop, he just is very good at tracking people. He has a unique backstory where he has a lot of skills that he puts to use in the career of tracking down people. He's a unique character. He's very much a loner. He does have a company where people give him some behind-the-scenes help, but largely it's just him driving around the country in a camper, and he takes the jobs as they come. He only accepts the rewards if he finds the person alive. Unique story, unique premise for a television show. I like the mystery of the week. Each week there's a new missing person to find, and the circumstances change from episode to episode. So I wanted to go back and look at the source material. I wanted to go back and see if the book was similar to the show, what the differences were, what the similarities were. I liked the premise of the show enough where I thought I really ought to check out the novel, especially because Jeffery Deaver is a very well-established writer who I've been meaning to get to for quite some time. I did enjoy the Bone Collector movie starring Denzel Washington, which is of course based on the Jeffery Deaver novel of the same name. I did watch the Lincoln Rhyme Bone Collector television show, a very short-lived television series. I wish it had more of a chance to flourish, but I liked the show. So I've really been meaning to check out Jeffery Deaver's work, and because The Never Game is a new series, there's only a few novels out in the series, it's only been around for a few years, it's very accessible. If we haven't read it already, I would highly recommend the book. I did enjoy the book quite a bit. Very similar to the show, he accepts rewards to find missing persons, so that's the same. What's different is in the book he drives an RV, whereas in the show he has a camper hauled behind a pickup truck, but whatever, that's not a huge difference. The core of the character is the same, and now that I've read the book, I can say Justin Hartley was perfectly cast as Coulter Shaw, in my opinion. It's not the casting nightmare that Tom Cruise was playing Jack Reacher, which they've subsequently corrected with Alan Ritchson. I think they got the Coulter Shaw actor right from the get-go. So kudos to whoever decided to put him in that role. The book is quite strong, although I do have a few nitpicks, but overall I highly recommend the book. I'm not going to give away too many spoilers here, but generally everybody who picks up the book is probably already going to know that the guy accepts rewards for finding missing persons, so that's not a spoiler. In this case, the father insists that his daughter has not just run away or gone off on her own, that she was the victim of foul play. The police don't take the case seriously, and when Coulter Shaw actually decides to investigate, he goes to the police, gives them his thoughts, and the police basically ignore him. Now, I would have preferred that the people who disrespect Coulter Shaw in the book sort of get their comeuppance at one point or another, but they really don't. Coulter Shaw just lets the insults roll off of his back, which is probably the better way of doing it, but you sort of want that moment where the people that don't really think he ought to be investigating it have their change of heart or get their comeuppance. That doesn't really happen. Maybe that's because I've read too many Reacher books where the people who disrespect him definitely get their comeuppance, but Coulter Shaw is not Jack Reacher, even though the network that put the Tracker show on the air were sort of looking for their Reacher because of the success of the Amazon show. I would have preferred that the entire book focus around a single missing person, very much like the television show does each week, but maybe that's my own bias having just finished watching all of the episodes that are currently available. The book does a very good job of establishing the mystery. It does a very good job of you experiencing Colter Shaw's thoughts as he narrows down possibilities. He assigns percentages to things. There's a 10% chance of this, a 20% chance of that, and he goes for the most likely thing first and works his way backwards from there. Very methodical, very logical. It's a very interesting character to read about. You sort of live vicariously through this person as he investigates things and uses his smarts and his abilities to come to hopefully a successful resolution in his search for missing persons. Downside of the book, it sets up too much for future installments. It's almost like the first book was written as an advertisement for subsequent books in a long series. Now, that's fine if you want to establish a series, but there are just too many threads that are unresolved. There are obviously just things that you have to be patient and wait for to be resolved in future installments. I don't like that. I'm fine with a long series of books, but when you get to a point where you're spending so much time talking about things that won't be resolved in this book, it doesn't really lead to a satisfying conclusion when you finish reading that book. There's even a point in which a bad guy with a gun is telling Colter Shaw not to pursue something that doesn't get resolved in the first book. That is too much of a James Bond sort of cliche where bad guy explains the plot and then leaves good guy alive, especially when it isn't even resolved in that particular story. I also didn't like the video game aspect of the book, and what I mean by that is the bad guy in the book is recreating levels from a video game and putting his victims through it to see if they can survive. That's fine. That's a good story point. What drags the book are lengthy descriptions of playing video games that don't actually exist. Now, I understand watching people play games is quite popular. There's many YouTube channels that discuss this. There are people who make a living on Twitch and other platforms where people watch them play video games. That's fine, but I don't really know how many people enjoy reading about people playing video games, let alone games that don't exist. The book spends just a little bit too much time describing fictional video games and how they're played. It makes sense that we have to tell us some about the story because the villain is using a video game as the premise for the crimes that this villain is committing. But it just goes on for too long. It sort of reminds me of Stephen King's Cujo, where there is an extended sequence where Stephen King is talking about breakfast cereals that don't exist, which just is unnecessary and takes way too long. This book spends too much time on video games, and I'm spending too much time talking about the video games, so I'm going to stop. The main story, the thread of the villain who kidnaps people, quite good. It's very well written. Jeffery Deaver is obviously a very talented writer. He's written many books over many years. Bottom line, good book, few minor nitpicks, but it is extremely well written and it pulls you along. It's very much a page turner. Very suspenseful. Well, more than suspenseful, it's very engaging. You want to know what happens next. And I can't think of a better compliment to a thriller writer than that. So check it out. I highly recommend The Never Game. I do plan on reading subsequent novels in this series. If you want to check out my novels, Judas Kissed and Becoming Quincy, those thrillers are available on Amazon.com right now. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and you'll hear more book reviews in the future.